Hello and welcome back to my channel. After having recently finished my playthrough of Life is Strange True Colors, I'm pretty excited to give it a review. So I'll be basing my review on kind of three major components. I feel like the Life is Strange games are defined by three major pillars here. We have art, we have music, and we have story. So those three concepts will be what I heavily base my review on, because I feel like that is what makes a Life is Strange game Life is Strange. Starting out with art, Life is Strange True Colors definitely ups the ante in the art department. This game looks gorgeous. The graphics are amazing. The scenery is amazing. So kudos to them for going in the right direction there and really bringing it home graphically. With that said, there are some kind of criticisms to be had here with the lack of scenes and lack of environment. So even though the game looks great, the facial animations are amazing, the character models are amazing, there really isn't that much to see. Haven Springs is, well, it's a small town, but the environment within the town that we get to interact with is even smaller. Oftentimes, Haven Springs reduced to a park, the Black Lantern, the record store, the dispensary, and the flower shop. And then the street that those kind of areas fall on is all we ever see of Haven Springs. So, as beautiful as it is, you really don't get to see very much at all. And then on top of that, you get to see the mining area a little bit. I think you go down there like once or twice, and there's not much to see there. So that's just kind of it exists, but that's that. So once again, the art is good and the characters look good. They've definitely improved there. But like I said, there's still a lot to be said about the lack of actual scenes and environments that we get to experience. Referencing the first two games, in the first game, you had Blackwell Academy and Arcadia Bay. So you had an entire school campus and an entire town that you got to interact with. And in the second game, every episode was its own environment. Sometimes you would have 3 or 4 environments within a single episode. So me personally, I think the second game is the most beautiful of them all. And another thing about the second game that they did a lot was incorporating scenes within the story where you took it all in and you got to see everything, whether it be a montage or a moment of calm or however it happens. They fit in time to show off their art and be like, hey, look at what we've done and it looks great. And my issue with the third game is they don't really do that. Not only is there not very many scenes, but there's very few times where they let the player just take it in. It's more often than not forced upon the player through these moments of calm and things of that nature. And I think maybe people didn't like how Life is Strange 2 would kind of just take the time to take in the environment and show you the scenery. But as kind of an artist, I can understand where they're coming from. They're proud of what they've built and they want to show that off, and they should be able to do that. So I wish that they found a better way to include the environments in Life is Strange 3 and a way to give us a little more bang for our buck. Moving on to music. The music of the Life is Strange franchise is so identifiable with the Life is Strange franchise. It is kind of like the bloodline of their storytelling. Like, you can tell a great story, but for Life is Strange, the music is as important for telling the story as the actual content is itself. I think the song selection for Life is Strange True Colors is fine, but it doesn't really shine because there's not really many instances where the music is the focal point of the story. So you only really have the broom scene, the end of chapter 1 scene, the chapter 4 scene where you do your little show, and the scene on chapter 5 where they're playing Dido. Aside from those scenes, there is no scene in this game where the music really defines the storytelling. And that's a shame, because looking at the first episode of Life is Strange 2, and there's probably 3 or 4 musical scenes right off the bat. It opens up with a musical theme as you're riding through the town with the bus, and then it goes into the woods scene after you've run away, and then from there you get the scene with No Woman, No Cry in the car, and then you get Block Party on the bed, and then you have Night Bus to conclude the whole chapter out. So yeah, 5 major musical scenes in a single chapter, and Life is Strange 3 doesn't even have that many musical scenes in its entire game. So I really feel like they missed the mark on the music here. Like I said, the song choices are fine, they fit, but they really don't stand out enough. A lot of times you have to enter the moments of calm in order to experience the musical scenes, which those are fine, but it's an optional sequence. And so if you miss that moment of calm or choose not to sit down at the dock or what have you, you miss out on a good chunk of this game's musical portion. Another chunk of it is hidden in the bar's jukebox, which once again the songs are fine, but I'm not going to sit around in the Black Lantern and listen to music. Like, that's not why I'm playing this game. So the developers needed to find better ways to incorporate the music into the story and allow the music to tell the story. And I really feel like they dropped the ball here. Like I said, the music selection is fine. It fits the Life is Strange mantra, but its presence is almost non-existent, which is really kind of unfortunate considering the fact that the loading screen has a record player on it, and they talk about the record store like way too often.
The record store.
Check out that record store. This record store is a record store. Pop by the record store. The record store. Definitely the record shop.
And music really isn't even that big of a deal in this game. Alright, so moving on to my biggest criticism, that is going to be the story. I'm always going to be a stickler for stories as a writer myself. There's nothing good going for Life is Strange True Colors. The story focuses on Gabe's death, which was spoiled by the developers in the launch trailer. Because of that spoiling, none of the audience really takes the time to care about Gabe because we all know he's going to die anyway. And then on top of that, Alex herself doesn't even seem that moved by Gabe's death. So it's like, okay, how am I as the audience supposed to care about this character when A, I already know he's going to die, and B, the character who's supposed to care about him doesn't really care about him. You see the people at his memorial service getting emotional and crying over these things, and Alex is just kind of meh. And she's not even like affected by their emotions. Like, that was the whole concept of her power, was that she gets moved by people's emotions, but she wasn't even fazed. So that was a huge letdown. The whole premise of the mystery and the story itself it did not deliver. There's far too much fluff in this story. Episodes 2 and 4 are primarily fluff. The LARP is fun, but at the end of the day, it's fluff. This game is not at all worth the $60 price tag. This is the first fully priced Life is Strange title, and it is the shortest Life is Strange title. And that seems completely backwards to me. Life is Strange 2, you're looking at like 4 hours an episode. Life is Strange 1, you're looking at about 4 hours an episode. This one, it's spotty. Some of them are like 2 hours, some of them are like 40 minutes, and it's absolutely ridiculous and not worth the money and not worth the time, really. The characters in this story are bland. You have Alex, she's an interesting character. Her past is by far more interesting than her present. And then you have Steph, but Steph was in 2 games, so they had time to further develop her character. But everybody else feels like the side character that can be described by their one unique characteristic. You have Ducky, who's the chatty, friendly old guy. You have Jed, who's the friendly parent of the group. And then you have Ryan, who's the wilderness guy. And it's like, when you're walking through town and you see the people who actually aren't part of the story and they just have random names like Bald Guy and Runner Girl and those kinds of people, that's literally how you can describe every side character in this story. And that's a problem. The Jed as a villain plot twist was way too predictable. Anyone who's played the first game saw that coming from a mile away. And I mean, it's a crime that they would cling so heavily to the storytelling of the first game to just rehash its twist the second time around. And not only was it a bad twist because they'd already done it, but it was a bad twist because it just didn't make sense. For Jed to turn around and kill you, or try and kill you, to cover up the mine collapse, it's just, there's so many flaws in that story. The idea of Typhon trying to cover something up in that mine was absolutely fascinating. It was compelling. I was so interested to figure out what Rhea was, and I walked away from the story not fully understanding what Rhea is. Like, what the heck? The idea that I believe I'm supposed to understand is that Typhon covered up the death of 7 miners in the mine collapse. That is completely unbelievable. The idea that a town as small as Haven Springs could have 7 people disappear right after a mine collapse, and they all worked in the mine, and no one knows that they died in this mine collapse is just absolutely asinine. That was the least satisfying reveal or conspiracy or whatever you want to call it that I've experienced in a very long time. Like, I can't say that enough. Like, Rhea had built up to be such a good thing for this game and for its story, only to end up being something that really didn't make any sense and did not add up. And then that just plays into the lackluster villain that is Jed Lucan, because as you're down in the mine, yeah, Jed Lucan made a bad call. He kept on digging when he probably shouldn't have. But at the end of the day, we all make bad calls. And then when shit hits the fan and they're trying to get the hell out of there, Jed Lucan said on multiple times that he has to go back and save the men that are down there.
Gotta run off moisture in this soil. Jed, we gotta call it. This dig is fucked.
Nothing's fucked.
Jed, we got no pumps running. No.
My teams have never quit a dig this deep before. We finish the job. We gotta move now! There's still men back there. They'll drown.
Yeah, and so will we if we don't get the fuck out. Make the call, Jed.
God damn it! God damn it! Everyone, let's go, now!
It's the men that are up there with him that convince him, hey, if you go down there, you're gonna die. Let's get the heck out of here. And I mean, they're probably right. There probably was nothing Jed could have done to save their lives. And it's unfortunate that this situation got covered up with Jed being a hero. But at the same time, he's not the anarchist, Satan human being that you get him to be by the end of the game. And that was just a big letdown for me. The cover-up was like the only good thing this story had going for it, and it was a bust. And then Jed Lucan as a villain just wasn't jiving. And so, for me personally, if I were writing this story, I don't like to do rewrites, but I feel like this story kind of needs one. I would have Alex come to Haven Springs to join Gabe in looking for their father. The core mystery of the game, if I were writing it, would be looking for the dad. Make it no secret that this was the dad's last known residence, because that was another twist that just came out of nowhere, completely out of left field, and because it was so bizarre, I really didn't find myself caring about it. So apparently Gabe came to Haven Springs to look for their dad, who died in this mine collapse that apparently no one knew about, which made no sense, and there's just too many holes in this story, and they should have explained Gabe coming to Haven Springs looking for the dad a long time ago to save all that information for the end. And they don't even give it to you in the end. You just have to put the pieces together yourself as the audience, which is, it can be satisfying, but when I have to make up my entire story myself, that's not satisfying. So at any rate, going back to my rewrite, Alex joins Gabe in Haven Point looking for their dad. If you tattle on Ethan, then Gabe won't die because he's from below the mines. And then if you don't tattle on Ethan, then Gabe will die because you guys go to the mines to rescue him. So that's another big twist. There's so many decisions in this game that really hold no merit and do nothing for the story. So from there, I wouldn't paint Jed as a villain in mine. I'd paint him as a guilt-stricken, borderline suicidal individual who covers it up with happiness and kindness. That is such a deeper character than what we got. I would have Alex using her powers to help Jed through this tough time, and that's how you end up in the mine, because Jed's eventually going to confess to you that your dad did work in this town, and he worked in this mine, and he died trying to uncover whatever it was down there. And so I would have all this happen by episode 3. Episode 3, you're in the mines, and you figure out what Rhea is. And for my story, Rhea is going to be a lot more of a supernatural thing. It's going to be a lot more strange, so to speak. It's going to fit the series in that regards. So you have Rhea, which when I was experiencing the story, I thought Rhea was going to be like an extraterrestrial that they dug up and then they're going to explore it or whatever, and they had to bury it because it was too dangerous. Something like that. And then, so episodes 4 and 5 of Life is Strange True Colors and my rewrite would focus on Rhea. Rhea, the plotline, Rhea, what it is. By this point, you've figured out where your dad is. Gabe is or isn't alive. and you've helped Jed through his massive trauma, and I just feel like that is such a better and more satisfying way to go with this story than what they went. It's heartbreaking that I have to rewrite the story in a way that I feel like is so better, but they just missed the mark on so many ways. And then to cap it off, the ending is just completely unsatisfying. It almost doesn't even exist. Like, there's only like 1.5 endings to this game, if that. That is probably the biggest place to drop the ball. In a story-based game, your choices are what makes your experience unique. So if I'm coming into this game and I get to the end and I figure out that there really is no branching endings, then at the end of the day, your choices made absolutely no difference to the outcome of the story. And at that point, everyone is just experiencing the same story. And then to go and have Gabe completely explain one of the endings to you it's dumb. The whole point of replay value in these games is trying to figure out, oh, what would have happened if? What would have happened if saves story-based games in the fact that you can push a lot of hours out of a story-based game if you can capitalize on what happens if. And this game doesn't leave anything to question. Gabe literally says, okay, this is exactly how the game ends if you stay in Haven Springs. If you leave Haven Springs, who knows? So naturally, as a curious person, most people are going to pick leaving Haven Springs because that's the only ending they haven't already seen. And then you learn that leaving Haven Springs is just like a one-off little scene. You get a little scene where it's like, oh, I'm leaving, I'm performing, and then boom, the game's over. They couldn't have dropped the ball enough on the ending. I was disappointed with the ending of the first game because it was a two-way choice, and one of the choices was a no-brainer for me, and it made the entire existence of that story pointless. And I would still take that ending over the ending that we had in True Colors, because True Colors, once again, isn't really a choice. It's like, okay, you have all of this happen, or who knows what happens here. I don't know. I'm too lazy to tell you. So, yeah. If you can't tell by now, I was sorely disappointed with Life is Strange 3. If I were to give it a rating, I would get it like a 6 out of 10, and I feel like that's being generous. Like, it was interesting enough to where I played through the whole thing, so it's got that going for it. I didn't quit, but at the same time, it was a far cry from the first one, and even further cry from the second one. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed my playthrough. I hope you enjoyed my reviews. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.